Hi everybody, welcome to the demonstration for the embedded media assignment from WATS1010 Introduction to Web Development. I'm Sean and this is how we're going to do it. I'm starting right here on my fork of the assignment repository, so you should fork it from the SU WebDev account. You can see that this is my copy right here. And if we scroll down and read in the README, we see that we are making a page for a short film called Monka. It's a cute little animation about a flying monkey, and it is released under a Creative Commons Attribution license, which makes it available for us to experiment with, and even we can copy it and make it available for download and everything as well. So this is a very handy movie for us, and we appreciate the production studio Wayback licensing it so that we can play with it. We are going to create an elegant presentation for this movie, both for the video content and for some audio content on the page, along with an about section. We're going to do what is typically thought of as a long scroll page, where you scroll down and get areas that are sort of horizontally banded to go together, so that you get an elegant header, and then a video area, an audio area, an about area, and then a footer area. You'll have navigation at the top and bottom of the page to jump to whichever section you want, and you'll have a persistent sort of social media link area. One unique part of this assignment is that we will have to go to an external application to convert the 1080p WebM format video to MP4. Both WebM and MP4 are formats used for native video players inside of HTML5 capable browsers, but different browsers prefer the different formats, and it's good to offer hopefully multiple formats so that the browser can always have what it expects to have. So we'll be using an external application to do that. Another unique aspect of this assignment is that we have multiple versions of images in each for every image that we supply, and part of your job is to choose the right image given a balance of file size and image quality. So if you look in the images directory, you'll notice here that we have the Blue Monkey PNG file, which looks very nice, but is 1.5 megabytes big. If we look at the GIF version of this, we see that it's only 462K, but we can see some visible image deterioration. You can see that there's some banding and some striation and a lot of pixels and everything. It almost looks like a painting in some spots. That's not a very good visual quality, although it's a third the size. If we look at the JPEG, however, we see that it's only 111K, which makes it significantly smaller, and the image quality is still great. So obviously, if we were trying to put this image on a page, we probably would choose to use JPEG, and we might even choose to size it differently depending on what size we were going to use it, because this is actually a fairly large image at this point in time. We're going to have to start thinking about things like that as we use images on the page, and so for all of the images that you have to play with here, you are given a choice between GIF, JPEG, and PNG. Any image that you bring in, it's expected that you're going to bring in the right format and the right size, and that's going to be what you use for your development. So that's how we're going to approach the images. In the media folder, under audio, we have an MP3, which is our clip for the soundtrack that you'll be able to embed in the page. And then we also have a couple of videos. One is an MP4 video loop that could be used if you want to experiment with how to do looping backgrounds, like looping video backgrounds on the page. And the other one is the WebM version of the entire Monka movie. It's about a 5-minute long movie, and that version is supplied at 1080p resolution in WebM format, and we'll need to convert that to MP4 format in order to provide both formats available for embedded native video players. So that's the goal. That's what we're going to do. And of course, to start working on this project, just like we start with every other one, we're going to create a new Code Anywhere development box. So I'm going over to Code Anywhere. I'm going to make a new dev box. Call this Embedded Media. I need to get my Git URL. And I'm going to create this box. So now that our development box is ready to go, we can start hacking away on this project. Like always, I will open up the index.html file, and I see the same thing that I saw in GitHub basically. I can see all these to-dos, which tell me what to do where, but there's a lot to figure out here. So this is probably going to take some thinking through. I'm going to do a couple of demonstrations just to walk through some of the most important aspects of this assignment. But I don't want this to be taken as every single thing that you should do. You should definitely be looking for, possibly other materials to bring in, like perhaps do a Google search for tile backgrounds or something, and find some background textures that you want to use, or maybe there's some other ideas that you have in terms of interface that you could make come to fruition. We also want to design a favicon, which could just be, cropping out the face of the monkey or the M from Monka or something like that, and making a PNG and then running that through a favicon tool. There's a lot of things that have been linked to throughout this module and in the resources pages to help you. And I'll mention that we have there's a lot of tutorials that tell you about how to make a favicon. There are a lot of tools out there that allow you to make to process favicons, where you can either draw your own favicons or you can convert images to favicons and embed them with multiple sizes and things like that. So there's a lot of ways that you can get things like that done. I'm also going to be using Handbrake to handle the video conversion. Handbrake is available for many platforms, and it does a lot of good conversion to support most sort of endpoints that you need to. And it converts a lot of different sources from a lot of different sources to the very usable MP4 and everything. So we're going to use this to convert our WebM video to MP4, and as you can see, you can download it for Mac, Windows, or Linux, Ubuntu, and you can build it if you want to for a different version of Ubuntu. So there's everybody can use this application. So we're gonna probably actually start by processing in Handbrake. So I'm going to pull up Handbrake right now, and it's going to open up, and I was experimenting with this before, so you can see my hierarchy of folders goes from my home directory and projects, courses. That's what my hierarchy looks like if you're curious. And you can convert this video. Now, if you haven't cloned this repository to your local machine, you can download through Code Anywhere, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. But for now, I can open this video, and for the destination, it's trying to put it just on my desktop. That's not actually where, well, actually, it doesn't really matter where I put it, so that's fine. I'll leave it there. And you notice on output settings, it gives us a couple options. We want the MP4, and we want to say web optimized. What that basically makes it do is organize the file so that as it starts to download, it can start to play back sooner. And then basically, if we just leave all of this set to the defaults, it will work pretty much fine. And that's okay. That's really exactly what we want. you're free to read a lot more about it, and you can do a lot more reading about video processing and transcoding. There's a lot of strategic aspects to it. For the most part, we're gonna try to avoid having to do this by hand in the future by using different services that will do it for us. But for now, it's useful for us to just kind of see how the nuts and bolts work. So we're gonna start processing this video, and it's going to work through until it makes that MP4. So I'm going to click back over to Code Anywhere, and I'm going to show you how, if you wanted to, you could open up this media video file, and you can right click on the .webm file, and you can say download, and it will download that file for you. So if you're just working on Code Anywhere and you don't have your repo cloned out, you can also download it directly from GitHub to your computer. So however you get this WebM file on your computer is fine. So I can see now that Handbrake has finished. So we say OK. And so that file is now just on my desktop. Now that we have that file saved, we need to be able to get it into our GitHub repository. And we run into a little bit of a problem when we're working with files that are large, like video files. So we have to do a little bit of extra hoop jumping because the files are so large. Normally, we would be able to right-click on a directory in our dev box and click the upload button, and that will open the upload dialog here on Code Anywhere. And we could do that with this file, and it will let us do that, but it appears that Code Anywhere has a limit of the size of video file that you can upload. It does allow you to upload images and other types of files, no problem, and it allows you to download files, no problem. But we can't upload these video files directly through this interface. So what that means is that we're going to need to clone our GitHub repository in order to add that file and then push it back up to GitHub. And then we'll be able to pull the changes from GitHub to the Code Anywhere dev box. So we're going to have a three-way connection here with GitHub in the middle. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to work that. I'm going to go back to GitHub, and on the home page here for our fork of the repository, this Sean R. Embedded Media, I'm going to click this Clone in Desktop button. And when I clone it in the desktop, it's going to ask me what I want to do, and I'm going to say Launch Application. And it's going to ask me, where do I want to clone it? And so I will say that I want to clone it in my courses directory, and I'm going to call it demo. I actually already have a clone of it because I've been working on this project myself, but for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to make it this demo repository right there. And it will clone in everything, and that means copying down that big .webm file as well. And again, these files are really bigger than GitHub would normally store for you, than you would normally use Git to store. GitHub has a limit of 100 megabytes on the size of an individual file, and you generally want to keep large files out of your Git repositories, because if you think about it, you're storing the whole history of this project. And so if you put a lot of big binary files like large audio or video or even large images, you make it take just a lot longer to work with your project. So I'm going to let GitHub continue cloning out this repository. So now that we have this all cloned out, we can add the file locally and then push it back up to GitHub and then pull that file across to Code Anywhere. So the first thing I'm going to do is open a Finder window so that I can see the files that are inside of this repository that GitHub cloned locally for me. So this is my computer that I'm browsing, and I can see all my files there. And I'm going to open a desktop finder, and I can see the file that I converted here. I'll just pull that MP4 into the directory so that it's where I want it to be. And that is inside of my copy of the project locally on my laptop. So now if I click to the Changes tab of this repository, I can see that it lists that MP4 file as one of the files that have changed. So now I can commit that change. I can type in a message, added MP4 version of video, and hit commit, and it committed it, no problem. So if I click back over to the GitHub website, I can go into my video folder, and I don't see it because I haven't actually pushed up those changes. So remember, the changes that you make on Code Anywhere don't matter until you send them to GitHub. So likewise, when you do changes in local development, you have to use an application to sync back up to GitHub. And in the GitHub application, they call it sync. So click sync. And you can click this button if you want to commit and sync the next time. But you can sync and it will ask you to log in. Sometimes it has issues. Try again. This is a web authentication, so there can be communication errors occasionally. But we'll go. And this will take a little while just because that is a bigger file. So we'll probably have to wait just a little while for it to actually upload. So now that it's finished syncing, we can click back over here and see that we have the MP4 version of the file available. So that looks good, and that finished uploading 9 minutes ago. So now we should be able to pull this change over to our Code Anywhere box. So this is something that we haven't really done before, but we just updated the repository locally on our computer and then sent that back to GitHub. And part of the reason why we use GitHub is so that we can move code between different computers. And so this is our development environment in Code Anywhere, and we can right click and run a pull command. And what a pull command does is it checks for new files and it pulls them down, and it tries to merge all of the work that's happened, if any work has happened, in all of the different files. So I'm going to pull, and it shows us again the sample of the command, git pull origin. So we're pulling from the remote server that we call our origin, and we're pulling the master branch. We're still on the master branch. So I'm going to click pull, and if I refresh this directory, now that we pulled, you can see that we have the 1080p MP4 available now inside of the video directory. So now we have everything that we need to work on this project, and we're all ready to get going. So let's go ahead and get going on making some of the changes to this file just to get everyone started and on the same page here. First thing that we ought to do is probably have a previewable version. So I'm going to right click on the dev box and click run project. Shows me that currently everything is green. We have some broken images and not too much content there. Definitely a long ways away from being an eye-catching, cool-looking movie website. So I'm going to copy this URL out because I still like to see this in a new tab, and I'm going to paste in this URL. I'm going to drag my tab over here so that I can easily switch between. And you notice that I see that fave icon there that is the default one with the star. That's what I'm going to try to replace later on with an image, but I'm not going to show that in this video. But you can, it's pretty easy to put in a new fave icon. But those are very helpful when you're looking at your tabs in the browser. So I'm going to go ahead and close the preview there, and I'm going to check out the to-do. So we need to make a fave icon. Okay, so what I would do there is probably crop one of the images, It could be, you know, representative, like the picture of the monkey's face, or it could be just colors or something. It could just be like a big M or something like that. I'd clip that. I'd follow one of the linked tutorials that we have in terms of making a favicon. They're pretty easy to make, and there's a lot of tools online that will process PNG images into favicon. So you really just need to crop down something to, you know, about 64 by 64 pixels, and you should be pretty okay. Notice that our style sheet is in css/main.css. This is a little different architecture than we're used to, so we'll need to keep this in mind. The fact that our CSS style sheet is in a subdirectory and our images are outside of that subdirectory. So that means that we're going to have to consider how we treat everything. Our HTML here has a green color applied to it. That's probably not what we want, but let's see if we can figure out what we do want. We have a header, and the header we need to make look elegant, and we need to use a background image. If I open up the images directory over here, I see that I have a bunch of images that could be good. The Monka title seems like a likely one that could be good. Let's see what this looks like. So here we see this title image. It says Monka. We can try using that perhaps. So in order to apply that, let's put that in as a background image. Well, we have this H1. So we'll have to also think about what we want to do with that. But let's put that in as a background image and see how that looks. So I'm going to get rid of this HTML style, and I'm going to write a style for the header element. And this one, I'm going to write background image. And that's going to be a URL. And the URL, I have to go up a directory and then down into the images directory. So the dot, remember, makes it go up. And then I can do a /img/ and this is Monka title.jpg. And I can see what that looks like. So I'm going to save that. And let's see if that worked, or if I made a mistake. Oh, it looks like it worked. Well, it certainly isn't the effect that we want. Exactly, huh? So let's look more at how we can enhance this. First of all, we probably need a height on this header. But of course, the problem that we get into is that we probably want to let it stretch out if it needs to, given what other stuff is in there. There's a menu in there and a title in there and a subtitle in there. But we certainly want it at least a certain height. So let's go with, let's say we want a min height of 400 pixels. That should be pretty decent. Oh, now we've got a much better height. Notice that we still have this padding or something around here. We can inspect this and see our header's there. Our body, looks like our HTML has a little padding to it. Let's see here. Oh, it looks like our body has a little margin as well. So if we want to like make things kind of suck up to the edges of the browser, and I think we do for the style here, let's take care of that as well. So let's say HTML. Let's make sure that we don't have any padding in the HTML because we don't really want any. So let's just set that padding to 0. And then in the body, let's make sure that we don't have any margin in the body. And now, if we refresh, oh, that looks a lot nicer. But we still have a little bit of space left at the top. We'll come back to that. We also don't have the background image lining up the way that we want. Ideally, we'd have that Mun-Ka kind of towards the top of it. So let's take a look at what we might be able to do there. We can see that we have background position, background repeat. We probably want to mess with those some. Let's say background repeat. Let's say none, because we don't want to repeat at all. And for background position, we put that in as offsets of X and Y. So if we said, or we could use keywords. So if we said, for example, center and center, then it would be centered horizontally and vertically inside of that element. Oh, and look at that. That definitely changed it. We could also explore what could be done for background size, like contain, which will resize it, and you can see that it's actually tiling, it's repeating. And it's repeating because background repeat is not valid. I should have read my expected a repeat style but found none. I made a mistake there. It's actually no repeat, right? Which I can tell is correct because it's auto hinting me for that. So if I save that and refresh, you'll see that in contain, it actually contained it to that style. That's probably not exactly what I want. So I wonder what would be the better way to do it. I could experiment here a little bit right in the browser. Instead of contain, I could try cover, which seems pretty cool. That works for me. That's a nice header. So I'm going to go back to my code and put cover in instead of contain. And so now when I refresh, I get that nice cover look. So that is how to put a background image in the header, and notice that I used the .. / at the beginning to go up a directory before I specify the image directory there. And that's because my CSS file is located in the CSS directory, and all my images are located under the image directory. So I have to go from the CSS file back out to the main directory and then back into the image directory to access these files here. Okay, this can be a little tricky at first. And of course, I probably should wrap this in single quotes because that's really best practices. So I will do that. Now, I will leave much of the rest of the header to you. You can do all kinds of interesting things in the header. But one thing that I want to make sure to take a look at is how to get some kind of interesting thing to happen with the social links as well. So you can see these social links are in the aside with the ID social. So one thing that I'm going to do first is just kind of get an idea of where that sits on the page. So I'm just going to say, I'm just going to target the ID social, and I'm just going to give it a pink background to see where it is and what it's doing now. So I'm going to go over here and take a look at that. And I can see that that's right there. So I think there's a few ways to kind of make this interesting. First of all, I don't really want those list items to look like list items at all. But list items are really convenient to style. So I'm going to leave them in lists on the HTML. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say you know what, the list items that are inside of social are going to have no margin and no padding. And the lists, the unordered list in social is going to have list style type none, so that they lose the little dots. So that should pop these over to the left and make them lose their dots. Oh, we didn't pop them over to the left. How come we didn't pop them over to the left? Let's inspect and figure that out. So if I select this thing, I can see that their padding is 0 and their margin is 0. But if I go in here, oh, I hover over the UL, and I can see that there's a padding applied on the left of the UL. So I don't want that. So I'm going to style that away as well. And I can go over here and look at the way that the UL is computed, and I can see that there's actually 40 pixels padding on the left side of this unordered list. So again, development tools help you a lot in seeing what's going on with your styles and everything. So I'm going to set this padding to 0. And then when I refresh, I should see these things jump to the left. And there they go. So great. That's perfect. Now, I think what I want to do is position this absolute. So I want it to go, I think I want this whole pound social to be positioned absolute. And I want the top to be 0. Actually, let's have the top be 50 px and the right to be 0. And let's do this. Let's say the top is 50 px and the right is 0, and the width we're going to make 250 px for now. So this should be a little pink box in the upper right hand corner that has our links in it that we can click on. So let's refresh and see. And that's exactly what we got, was a little pink box in the upper right hand corner that we can put our links on. Now, what's cool about this is that we can read all of the links and everything, and it looks good and all. But what if we wanted to, make like a fancier looking effect? Like what if we wanted it to be reactive, so that it was kind of like one of those tags that when you come over it, it slides out? We can do that with CSS. So let's see how we can do it with CSS. What we can do is, let's set this, instead of making this width 250 px, let's make it 25 px. And then let's write another style that uses the hover pseudo class. And we're going to say when we hover, make it 250 px. And what this says is, whenever the cursor hovers over the social box element, then increase the width of the social element to 250 pixels. So we're going to save that, and we're going to refresh, and this pink box should shrink up, and it did. And when we go over it, it pops out. So it shrinks up, and then when we go over it, it pops out, and we can click those links. Now that's a pretty sudden pop out. So what we can do is we could set the transition on this share box, this social box. And so we can add a transition and we can say 1 second. Well, actually, let's make it a little slower. 2 seconds width. And so that should add a 2-second transition for width to the social box, if I wrote that properly, which I probably didn't, but let's see here. And there we go. It's that easy to get some more elegant movement. Now, obviously, that's not the best planned movement, and that's certainly not a finished effect. But if you combine that with the way that you can make different styles already, then you've got a pretty dynamic potential there for how you could shape doing these sorts of little features or extra buttons or extra functions or whatever you want to call them. So that's going to be how to use some funky styling to handle the share box. The last thing that I want to do on this video is talk about how to get the video actually into your page. To put the video on the page, we're going to use the native HTML5 video player that will show up in the browser. So for that, we're going to go back into our HTML here, and we're going to go right here to where this to-do is. It says embed the WebM and MP4 video with full controls. So to do that, we basically put in the video tag and we add the controls attribute. The controls attribute is what's known as a Boolean attribute, which means that its only values are true and false. And if it exists, then it's true, and it doesn't actually matter what you set the value to. So all we need to do is actually list it there. There are a couple of other Boolean attributes that you can apply to the video tag, and you can read about them in some of the documentation that we have. I always close tags after I start them. So once we have the video in there, then we need to put in some source tags. And for the source, we can put in the href. And the href for these is going to be media/video and then the file name. So we can have do that, and then type equals video/mp4, and we can do the same thing for the WebM version. And that should get us video embedded on our page. So let's take a look. And here we have some video embedded. So we got the video tag to embed, but we appear to have had an issue in actually accessing our sources. So let's debug this and figure out why that's happening. Let's look at this element. And we can see that inside of this watch section, we have video controls. First thing to check is always, is our link good? And we can do that because we can right click on the link and say open link in new tab. And in fact, it looks like our link is not good. Okay. And I think that I see the problem. I think I made a typo in that file name. So let's go back over here and see. In fact, there's an underscore there, and there's no underscores over here. So that's the problem. So I was able to figure that out because I looked in my inspector to see what the link was. And when I right-clicked on it and I opened it in a new tab, I got a 404. And so then when I looked more closely at that link, I could see that there was an error in spelling. So now let's refresh the page. And these links look better, but we're still not getting any playback. When we open the link in the new tab, it's working. So I must have made a syntax error here. Let's take a look. Oh, it's source, not href. Well, that's a silly error. So these now look good. Source equals instead of href equals. That makes sense if we think about it, because it's not a link, it's a video source. So now if we refresh, oh, we have our video embedded. And I can hit play. And the video plays back just fine. So, yay, congratulations to us. After a little bit of stumbling around, we were able to do it. And that's pretty par for the course, really. Not too bad. I apologize if that seems confusing or like a headache, but I think it's really useful to just see how to work through issues and how to work through all of these questions. So basically, embedding the audio is very, very similar. And you can do a few things, like you can embed, you can use a poster. So if we look at the tutorials that we have available, they talk about providing additional elements like a poster. So you can specify a poster attribute. And you can affect things with styles. Obviously, I wouldn't put inline styles in, but you could put in other styles. So we could say poster equals, and then that could be media, video, and then say video poster.png. And if we save that and refresh here, then we see that it loads and it's not just white or anything. It's actually the first, whatever the poster image was. So we could modify that poster image, and whatever we modified is what it would say. It could just say, click here to play, and or whatever, and then you can click it and actually play. So that's how to embed the video, and you can use both MP4 and WebM, since that's how. And so it looks like Chrome is preferring the MP4, and so that MP4 video that we converted is obviously working. So yay for that. That is basically it for the video demo. You are going to be able to do all kinds of different stuff to make this look good. When you get down here to the Wayback People spot, I wanted to give these people a little bit of credit, and also it's a handy way to think about doing something that's very common, which is this kind of personnel or about us kind of display, where we have a headshot of a person along with some biographical information or some details. So we'll just list them on our page to give them as much due credit as we possibly can. And you'll also have to pick out whichever image you think works, whether you should be using the GIF, the JPEG, or the PNG. So we'll be looking at that. And otherwise, just try to make this the most elegant, nice-looking page possible. Your goal is to, entice people to watch the movie and download it and engage with it. And so the movie's fun. It's colorful. There's lots of things that you could pick up on in terms of design or interface or whatnot. So, feel free to get in touch if you have any ideas and you're not sure how to make them work out. Let me know, and I will be happy to help you out and help you do some cool stuff. So have fun with it, and good luck with it, and enjoy yourself. You guys take care. Bye-bye.